Hey folks, how you doing tonight? Glad you're with us. We're going to give a reaction to that debate that we just watched. Then we'll do our roll call, and then I'll answer your questions. It'll be a quick live here tonight. I'm a little tired, but as always, we got to do our thing. That was certainly a debate, not as painful to watch as the last one, but for those of us concerned about peace, jobs, democracy, and equality, it was certainly painful to watch. It wasn't as bad as the last one. They were not talking over each other, but it was certainly painful. It was certainly painful. So, yeah, welcome everybody. If you haven't done so already, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Share this on your Twitter, share this on your Facebook, share this on your Reddit, not your Reddit, but share it on Reddit. Tweet this out, make this a bigger audience. The more the merrier. The more of your questions I can answer, the happier we all are. So I guess I'll just jump right into my reaction to that debate that we just watched. The second and final debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. All right. First of all, a number of people that I know, people I work with, people that are my friends. I mentioned that there was a debate tonight, and they're like, "When is it?" And I said, "It's tonight." I said, "Tonight is the debate," and people are like, "Oh, another one of those." People are sick of this election. People are sick of this election. It is just kind of making everyone nauseous. The fear of violence potentially after the vote, the fear of a contested vote, mail-in voting, the hysteria from both sides about the other side, the condition in the country. Everyone is tired of this election. Everyone is sick in their stomach from this election. That last debate that we watched made everyone want to vomit. It was utterly atrocious. So in that atmosphere, people watched tonight, and I mean, if you know politics with any depth, tonight's debate would also be painful, but it wasn't, it wasn't as physically painful, right? They weren't talking over each other as much. The threat of a mute hung over them. The questioner was a little more careful in how things were framed up. But a couple things stood out, and I'm just going to tackle these things by topic. First of all, around the healthcare issue, right? So the situation is that we're in the process of confirming a Supreme Court justice, Amy Coney Barrett, who is set to replace Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And Amy Coney Barrett is what do you call it? Amy Coney Barrett is an evangelical. She's technically a Roman Catholic, but she's part of a special charismatic Pentecostal community within the Catholic Church called People of Praise. She's got ties to the Federalist Society, which is a group of people. It's a right-wing think tank that thinks that minimum wage is communism and you shouldn't have a minimum wage. And, she very much, is a free marketeer, neoliberal free marketeer, privatized Milton Friedman kind of person. And she's in the process of being confirmed to the Supreme Court. So there's fear that the Supreme Court could overturn Obamacare. Now, Obamacare, was the healthcare legislation that was passed by Barack Obama. And what did Obamacare do? Obamacare basically, it set up a website where you can buy private insurance, and it required insurance companies to not be able to not insure you if you have a pre-existing condition. That's really it. Now, Trump has opposed Obamacare because originally Obamacare had a thing called an individual mandate, meaning that if you did not buy health care, you got a $1,000 fine in your taxes. That was included in Obamacare. Trump says he's against that. But Trump also says he's against, Obamacare entirely. When Obamacare was being passed, the Republicans said Obamacare was communism. It was a government takeover of health care. Many times on Fox News, they would say after Obamacare passed, we now have socialized health care, etc. The reality is Obamacare, it was just kind of an adjustment of the private insurance system that Richard Nixon created. There was nothing about it. Now, originally, the proposal for Obamacare had been to include what was called a public option, meaning that in addition to the private insurance plans, there would be a public insurance plan that would kind of set the standards right? And a lot of U.S. states have that. New York State has a public insurance plan that like kind of sets the standards for the private sector because the private sector is competing with this public sector campaign. It like it forces them to be better is the idea. Well, Obama backed down immediately. Said, "Oh, okay, no public option," and he threw out the public option. So tonight, Trump says he wants to get rid of Obamacare but replace it with much better health care. Meanwhile, Joe Biden said he wants the public option. He wants to improve Obamacare by including the public option. Well, the Obama administration threw the public option onto the table immediately. Okay, Obamacare Heritage Foundation. All right, Obamacare, Romney Care. And you'll remember so the Democrats have abandoned this public option idea. And on top of that, the Democrats have just, during that whole healthcare debacle, they just, rolled over and played dead. And the right wing declared that Obamacare was communism. And the Obama administration's strategy was surrender, surrender, surrender. Now, Trump says he would replace Obamacare with much better health care. Yeah, I don't buy that because at the Trump camp, there's lots of libertarians. And libertarians, they really do believe healthcare is not a right, that your healthcare is your business, that the community, society as a whole, has no obligation to you in terms of healthcare, right? And they believe that if the government gives you healthcare, that's communism, right? That's not American free market capitalism. If we do what every other industrial country in the world does, right, then somehow that's communism. There's the argument, right? Well, that's, if we make sure everyone can see a doctor when they're sick, that's communism. And, it's this individual liberalism, right? This idea that you're on your own. Your healthcare is your business. Society has no obligation to you. You have no obligation to society, right? And you'll get libertarians who go as far as saying that if people can't afford healthcare and they die, that's good because they're weak, inferior human beings and they should just die. I think Katie Hopkins, the conservative commentator from Britain, said that, right? And they really do believe people who can't afford healthcare should die because they are inferior species, right? It's Charles Darwin, survival of the fittest. They're useless eaters, as they call them. And the Nazis, they did this in Nazi Germany, right? They had posters up of a disabled man. This man cost the taxpayers this much money. And it was this kind of logic that if you are not healthy and if you can't afford to take care of yourself, you are not worthy of life. That was the Nazi argument, right? Now, the Nazis didn't implement it de facto by just letting people die. They actually started, going full on and killing people. Bit of a difference there. But it's the same kind of logic. It's this Charles Darwin, Malthusian, Robert Malthus, British Empire, Adam Smith philosophy, right? Is the idea is if you can't afford health care, if you, for whatever reason, you're poor, you can't afford health care, maybe you have a disease that's very chronic and very expensive, we should just let you die because this is how nature works. Survival of the fittest and the strongest survive. The richest survive. If they're rich, it's because they work the hardest. They're the richest. This is what the right wing thinks. They hand out Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. Google the phrase "healthcare is not a right," and you will find many, many, many articles from all kinds of publications, the Heritage Foundation, the Wall Street Journal, National Review. They really do believe that giving health care to people is a crime, right? That it is somehow a crime against the sacred capitalist system. If you give people health care, it's a crime. That's what they believe. So they are very, very much, very, very much opposed to that. Whereas, the Democrats, historically, they've been about, okay, they want low-income people to vote for them. Okay, they're strong, they're closer to labor unions. So they tend to be the voice that, they raise the issue of quote-unquote universal health care. But there's a lot of confusion, right? Because universal health care just means everyone's insured. That's all it means, right? They could be insured with private insurance, whatever, right? So then there's what they call a public option, which means that there is private insurance, but there is a public insurance plan. And the public insurance plan competes with the private sector and forces the private sector to do better to compete with it. Obama originally said he was for that and changed his mind. Tonight, Joe Biden suddenly changed his mind back and said, "Oh yeah, I'm for that," which he and Obama changed their minds about. Right, so that's a public option. There's what they call single-payer health care, and that's what they have in Canada. And that single-payer health care is when the healthcare system, it's private. You have private hospitals, private medical companies, private doctors' offices, etc. But you have a single insurance company, meaning the government pays everyone's medical bills. The government is the insurer, but it's a private healthcare system, right? That's what Canada has. Then you have what you can call national healthcare. That's what Britain has, and that's what most European countries have, where they have a national health service, where doctors are government employees. That's what most countries in the world have, is a national healthcare program, a national healthcare service. And then socialist healthcare is something different. Socialist healthcare is healthcare that is part of a state-run, centrally planned economy. Socialist healthcare is like what Cuba has, where healthcare is part of the overall 5-year economic plan of the country. That's the way the Russian medical system was built, during the 5-year plans, where they were building steel mills here, hospitals here. It's when healthcare is part of a socialist economy that it is socialist healthcare. So there's these words get used interchangeably, right? Biden says that he wants to expand Obamacare to include public option. Donald Trump shoots back at one point. He shoots back at him and says, well, he said, what you want is socialist healthcare. Well, no, right? There's Obamacare, there's public option, there's single payer, there's national healthcare, and there's socialist healthcare. Way big gap between those things. One thing that Trump said during the debate about healthcare that just blew my mind was Trump said, he wants socialist healthcare. He wants to get rid of your Medicare and your Social Security. Well, I'm sorry. I mean, if he thinks that socialist means government, which is what Republicans and conservatives generally mean. They think if the government does it, it's socialism. Oh, thank you. I'm glad you liked my book, Noah. Thank you very much. No Loza. I'm glad you liked the book. So if government means socialism, right? If socialism just means government, if he wants socialist healthcare, why would he get rid of Medicare, which is a government program, and Social Security, which is a government program? That doesn't make any sense, right? It's like, oh, he wants a government takeover. He wants a socialist takeover of healthcare, and he's going to get rid of your Medicare, and he's going to get rid of your Social Security. That doesn't make any sense. That does not make any sense, right? But this is a common pattern. Medicare and Social Security are the most popular social programs in the United States, right? People complain about the DMV. People complain about the post office. People complain about the military. People complain about all kinds of government programs. But there's two government programs that if you were to say you were against them, you would lose the election. You said you were against Medicare. That's health care for older folks. You were against Social Security, which is the old age pension program for older folks. You would lose the election. So Obama is saying he wants socialist health care, which means it'll get rid of your Social Security and your Medicare. That makes absolutely no sense, right? Expanding government control of health care, which Biden doesn't really say he wants to do, would not get rid of other government programs. So that doesn't make any sense. But this is not the first time. This is not the first time that we've heard this kind of rhetoric from Republicans. During the healthcare debate, when Obamacare was being passed, at multiple times, Tea Party activists would get up at these town hall meetings and say, get the government out of my Medicare. Well, Medicare is a government program. But see, it can't be a government program because government is bad. It's communism. So Medicare must be private because it's good. Right? This is how libertarians and conservatives think. Free market is their religion, okay? So facts do not matter. Is Medicare a good program? Yes. Therefore, it must not be from the government somehow. It can't, it's kind of like with China, right? You point to China as a successful socialist society, and libertarians go, oh, no, it's capitalist. And you're like, really? Then why does the government control the banks? Why does the government control... but it's good, so it must be capitalist, right? This is how these people think. They have this dogmatic, blind belief that the free market capitalist system is always the answer. So when Trump gets up there and he says, oh, he wants socialism, that means getting rid of your Medicare. To a lot of people, that makes sense because they have been spoon-fed Cold War anti-communist propaganda their whole lives. And this is why, folks, you have to be a tankie. You have to be a tankie. You absolutely have to be a tankie because we're here debating whether or not there should be a public option in insurance. And he's shouting, socialism is evil. If we can't have a conversation about the real concrete achievements of the Soviet Union and the fact that no, socialism wasn't just a big failure everywhere it's ever been tried, if we can't have that conversation, we can't argue about healthcare, right? It comes up in every every debate tonight. Joe Biden does not even advocate, universal insurance, single payer. He's just talking about a public option, just a public option. And Trump shoots out socialism. We have to be able to respond to this. The number one argument against socialism, is everywhere that socialism has ever been tried, it's been nothing but a big failure. And that is so obviously false. So obviously false. It's unbelievable. I mean, the Soviet Union had the first spacecraft. They defeated the Nazis. They industrialized the whole country. They wiped out illiteracy. They electrified the whole country. The whole country had running water. They almost doubled the life expectancy, right? I mean, Bolivia had the highest rate of GDP growth in all of South America until the recent coup, right? China has gone from being one of the poorest countries in the world to being, at this point, they are the largest economy in the world, right? And like, it's unbelievable, right? Neither represents the working class, says David Fox. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And we will write that down. I'll get to that. Neither represents the working class. But you have to be a tanky. You have to be a tanky. And I'm sorry, folks, but if you're going to be a Trotskyite or a democratic socialist or an anarcho, whatever, you're not going to be able to counter this, because the foundation of America's free market insanity is the lies about communism. And if you cannot refute those lies, if you don't have the courage to be a tanky and just stand up and say, look, the emperor has no clothes. China has not been destroyed by communism, right? Cuba has not been destroyed by communism. In fact, they have a healthcare system that's admired all over the world. If you don't have the courage to get up, if people don't just get up and say, the emperor has no clothes, this is a big fat lie. Communism has not failed everywhere it's ever been tried. Socialism has not failed everywhere it's ever been tried. Most countries around the developing world would kill to have Cuba's medical system, right? Many Western countries admire and study the achievements of this impoverished Cuba island in the Caribbean, Cuba, this historically poor island that has an amazing healthcare system. If you don't have the guts to get up and say, look, this thing that we hear over and over and over again, communism, socialism just failed everywhere it's ever been tried, we can't argue about healthcare. We can't argue about labor. We can't argue about the minimum wage. We can't argue about any of this stuff. We can't. You have to be a tanky, right? You have to be a tanky. And if you want to get up there and say, sure, every lie about the Soviet Union is true, China Mao, we'll talk about that. All right. Every lie, China Mao nightmare. Every statement about every statement about the Soviet Union is absolutely true. They never achieved anything. It was an evil society. Pan-American socialism. All right. Pan-American socialism. If you can't challenge that, you're going to lose every argument. And we saw that tonight, right? That essentially Joe Biden lost an argument about healthcare because all Trump had to do was dog whistle this stupid anti-communism we get. But anyway, healthcare was a minor part of the debate. So I wanted to get to a couple issues. And let me make clear here, folks, I am not for either candidate, okay? Trump sickens me. Biden, and especially Kamala Harris, who I wrote a book about, sickens me, okay? I am sickened by both candidates. They are both evil, in my opinion. They both represent the ruling class. I don't talk about people I work with. I'm not going to go there. I'm just not going to, I'm not for either candidate, okay? They're both a disaster for the country in their own way, all right? This is the Eastern establishment and the ultra-rich fighting against the lower levels of capital, and I'll get into that, especially when it comes to oil. Let's talk about, so first Biden, right? Trump hit Biden with Burisma Holdings, with these emails that have been revealed about crooked deals in China and all of that. And, all right, China in Korea. And Korean War. And, it's true, okay? These emails, we have confirmation that they are real. I mean, they didn't come from Russia, right? That's what they kept saying, Russia, 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 Russia. Well, they didn't come from Russia. They came from a laptop that was left in a computer repair shop. They appear to be authentic, right? I mean, now we've got, Tony Bobulinski coming forward. It's looking like it's real, folks. I mean, never say never. I mean, we could find out later that it's all a big hoax, right? You never say never, right? You never really know, right? I mean, but it's looking like it's real. And the fact that the response to this from the establishment has been, Twitter and Facebook banning the New York Post story on it. The fact that NPR said they will not cover it and made a statement that they won't do a story on this story. And that tonight Biden, 50 people in the intelligence agency said that this is a Russian conspiracy or something. Is it true or false? And if you just say, well, it's false, it's false, it's false, you're not refuting anything. It's looking like it's real. Burisma Holdings is not a fake company. Yes, Hunter Biden worked for Burisma Holdings. Yes, he worked for Burisma Holdings at the same time the United States was heavily involved in overthrowing the Ukrainian government and setting up the fanatically anti-Russian government in Kiev. Yes. Joe Biden is on tape bragging that he got the prosecutor who was investigating Burisma Holdings fired. I mean, this is all real, okay? We got Tony Bobulinski coming forward and talking about Sinohawk and Sinohawk Holdings. And folks, I mean, Trump is corrupt, okay? You can talk about Trump hotels, and there's all kinds of, of interests that Donald Trump is, and with his family. And no one's saying that Trump is a clean guy, because he's not. Okay? And that's the thing, is it's like, everybody knows Trump is corrupt, right? And that's the sad thing about all of this. And I'll get to that at the end. But Trump is all like, I'm not a politician, right? People know Trump is corrupt, right? Biden, on the other hand, it looks like Biden is corrupt. Looks a lot like Biden is corrupt. And, but Biden stands for this American politics as usual, where we pretend that the big elephant in the room, that the big corporations run the government and the rich and powerful pay barely any taxes and they write our laws, and that the big billionaires and bankers run the government. Joe Biden represents the politics of the past, where we pretend that that's not real. And Trump represents a cynicism, a right-wing pessimistic cynicism that acknowledges what's true. And that's, we saw that on full display tonight. But yeah, and the fact that it's Russia. Well, is it true or is it not true, right? Just Russia says true things, folks. If Biden's campaign honestly believes Trump is so much worse than them, being that DT is polling distance, why are they holding to policies to attract more voters? That's a good question. Why Biden not attract more voters? Very good question. I will address that during the Q&A. But yeah, it's just like, this is called there's a name for this, right? It is a logical fallacy, right? So-and-so said it, therefore it cannot be true. No. You don't like Russia, you don't like the Russian government. Okay, well, just because you're alleging that they are somehow behind saying this, is it true or is it false? It's looking like it's true, folks, and appealing to this Cold War, Russia no good, Russia conspiracy. The moment in the debate when Trump said, so you think the laptop is Russia also? That nailed Biden. Because exactly, right? People are sick of this hoax, this Russiagate hoax. People are tired of it. And when he said, you think the laptop is Russia also? Boom. That was like a punch right in the throat. That was like the epic punch of the night. Biden had no response to that. You think the laptop is Russia too, because the people of the United States are so sick of this Russiagate story. Democrats and Republicans, nobody wants to hear the silly Russian conspiracy story right now. The FBI is coming out, Iran sent a bunch of people emails and Russia. People are sick of this, right? Intelligence agencies lie all the time. In fact, they even have special programs to lie. Google Project Mockingbird, right? Read about some of the media operations that were part of COINTELPRO, right? It's I'm sorry, intelligence agencies lie. In every country, intelligence agencies lie, okay? That's just a fact. Intelligence work is not an honesty job. Mike Pompeo is on tape saying when he was at the FBI, we lied, we stole, we cheated. That's what they do, right? That's intelligence. That's generally that murky world of CIA, whatever. They don't tell the truth. I mean, and that's how that stuff works, right? John Brennan, when he was being appointed as CIA director, he was saying, "Oh, we don't have drones in this country. We don't have drones in that country." Well, turned out we did. Um, okay. Okay. All right. Ultra rich hate sock dems. Alrighty. So there you go. Alrighty. Now on immigration, that was where Donald Trump was just at his worst. When he said that the Democrats' plan to bail out the economy during coronavirus, it was not a plan to help Americans. It was a plan to help them. When he said them, that was a racist dog whistle. That was a racist dog whistle. And that's ridiculous. The idea that the Democrats' plan would only give aid to immigrants, that's ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous. But it's something that will get under people's skin. A lot of, right-wing working class people will hear that and go, the Democrats wanted to give aid to these immigrants. And it's like, that's ridiculous, right? I mean, the Democrats' plan, you can be critical of it and stuff, but yeah. And then when Trump said that the only immigrants that follow U.S. immigration laws and show up for their hearings are the ones with low IQ, that was something special. So, like, basically, he's saying that if you're an immigrant in the United States, you shouldn't follow immigration laws. That's what he said. It doesn't even make any sense. I don't get it. He said, like, he's talking about catch and release, and Joe Biden's explaining what catch and release actually means, which means is if you're, an asylum seeker and you get a hearing, and he's like, well, yeah, well, the only ones who show up are the ones with low IQ. The majority do show up, as many people have pointed out, and it's like, why is it low IQ to follow U.S. immigration law? I mean, if you don't show up for your hearing, you're then, I believe, in violation of the law. Right? You're in the United States illegally at that point, right? So why would you not follow the law and apply for asylum in the legal set? Like, it doesn't make any sense. It does not make any sense, right? It was bizarre, right? And I mean, first of all, it's not true. Number one. Number two, it does not make any sense, right? I mean, if there's an issue where only people that are of, quote, low IQ are showing up for their immigration hearings, perhaps there's a big problem with our immigration system. I mean, that was at that point. But yeah, when he was claiming that the Democrats' plan for bailing out during the coronavirus, that plan only helps undocumented immigrants, that's ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous. It was a shameful statement. Absolutely shameful statement. Now, what's interesting is tonight, it wasn't supposed to really be a foreign policy debate. It wasn't supposed to be a foreign policy debate, but there was a plenty talked about in foreign policy. And, Trump was bad, but Biden was abysmal. He said that President Xi Jinping of China, President Kim Jong-un of North Korea, and President Putin of Russia are, quote, thugs. And he did not just say it once. He said it 3 times. He used the word thug to describe the leaders of Russia, the largest country in the world in terms of geography, China, the largest country of the world in terms of population, and North Korea. Now, folks, if you're referring to the leaders of Russia, China, and North Korea as thugs, do you really think you will be in a position to make peace when you come into office? I mean, I'm sorry, but it's like, we in the United States are not the only people that get to watch this debate. Kim Jong-un watched that debate. The leaders of Russia watched that debate. The leaders of China watched that debate. And they said, thugs? Are you kidding me? Right? That's there's an expression. They say, them's fighting words, right? That's not the language of peace. That's not Joe Biden talking to Trump, right? That's Joe Biden talking to the military-industrial complex and talking to the CIA and saying, don't worry, I'm not going to go shake hands like this guy did. I mean, he was attacking Trump for being friendly and negotiating with North Korea, right? That was abysmal. Thugs is the word he used. And it wasn't a passing remark. He said it 3 times. 3 times in the debate, he said thugs. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Biden repeated the lie that Russia is paying bounties to kill U.S. troops in Afghanistan, and that's not true. Why would Russia want further instability in Afghanistan? Right? Afghanistan is a lot closer to Russia than it is to the United States. Russia has big problems with Islamic terrorist groups and heroin gangs. They want stability in Afghanistan. But it's the United States that has been occupying Afghanistan since 2003 or 2002, and ever since then it's been instability. It's become the heroin capital of the world. Terrorist groups are there. I mean, it does not make any sense. Why in the world would it be in Russia's interest to further destabilize and escalate the tension and fighting in a country so close to it? It does not make any sense. And the New York Times tried to claim it was true, and it wasn't true, right? I mean, there's no proof of this that's been provided. And in fact, at the time the idea that this might be happening was originally surfaced, it appears that almost everybody knew it was false. And then they realized they could use it against Russia, and all of a sudden it was in the headlines. The idea of Russia paying bounties to the Taliban, it makes absolutely no sense. That would be Russia shooting itself in the foot, okay? Russia wants to stop the spread of heroin gangs into Russia. Russia wants to stop the spread of jihadist and Wahhabi groups, and thank you, Anas, for the super chat. It wants to stop this. So it does not make any sense. It is simply not accurate. At one point during the debate, I kid you not. So first we had a big mistake from Trump. Trump said, hey, North Korea, it's a good relationship. We're not at war. Well, actually, technically, the United States and North Korea are still at war. Bet you didn't know that. But yeah, the end of the Korean War, there was an armistice that was signed, but an armistice does not end a war. There was never a treaty signed between the USA and the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, and the USA and the Democratic People's Republic of Korea do not recognize each other. There is no diplomatic relationship between the countries. So yes, we are technically at war. We recognize the government of South Korea, the Republic of Korea, which claims to be the government for the entire peninsula. We do not recognize the DPRK in the north. So that would mean that we are still at war with North Korea. So Trump is just wrong about that. Now, maybe he just doesn't understand all of it. So then Biden, he says, oh yeah, he said, what about Hitler? He compared Kim Jong-un to Hitler. Kim Jong-un, and I shouldn't say Kim Jong-un, but North Korea gave money and support to the Black Panther Party. Kim Jong-un and North Korea have given support to the Palestinians. Kim Jong-un and North Korea gave support and weapons to the people of South Africa when they were fighting against apartheid. You cannot compare Kim Jong-un to Hitler. I mean, that's just like, no. I mean, people allege there's prison camps there. There's not death camps there. Like, this is, and again, is that the kind of rhetoric and language that you use if you are trying to create peace? Is that how you create peace in the world, right? Donald Trump, the first U.S. president to ever visit North Korea, right? And, the peace efforts were sabotaged by John Bolton. I get into that in some other videos. But, that was huge. And it was beautiful. And it was the best thing Donald Trump has done, and it appears, it failed, right? I mean, there were 3 meetings, and then it was off. But I must absolutely say, Biden doesn't want to finish what Trump started. That's pretty clear. I mean, Biden does not want peace between the USA and Russia, the USA and China, or the USA and North Korea. That is abundantly clear. He made that abundantly clear tonight. The other thing, I mean, early on in the debate, Trump declared that COVID-19 was China's fault. It's China's fault. China's fault. And it's not China's fault. I'm sorry, China got COVID before anybody else. China dealt with COVID way more effectively than we have. I'm not understanding how this is China's fault, right? China locked down the country, and we called them authoritarian in response to it. U.S. media criticized them for doing it. Donald Trump looked at China and, as Biden pointed out, said they're doing a great job, and they did a great job. China's economy right now is zooming forward. Zooming forward. China set up the Health Silk Road to give aid to Italy. I'm sorry, COVID is not China's fault. COVID is not China's fault. I mean, it's not. I mean, there are some things that are true, and there are some things that are not. That is not. Another part of the debate, another lie, right? Trump says that, China, look at China, it's filthy. It's just filthy. Bull honking. Malarkey. Poppycock. I'm sorry. Some things are true and some things are not. China's carbon emissions rate is much lower than the United States. China is right now building Saigon New Area, which is this model city built by the Communist Party and President Xi Jinping. And in this model city, they're using all green technology. China is leading the world in solar panel production. Right? China is leading the world in fusion energy research, and Russia's President Vladimir Putin has called for an international effort on fusion energy research, the hope for getting us out of the trap of fossil fuels. How in the world? All right, I'll write it down. How in the world can you say with a straight face, China surpassing? How in the world can you say with a straight face that China is filthy compared to the United States? I mean, I'm sorry, China's still on the Paris Climate Accords. The United States isn't. I mean, I'm sorry, but it's like some things are true, some things are not. Some things are true and some things are not. I mean, that was unbelievable to me. And the oil section of the debate was particularly interesting, right? So Trump did something that he has frequently done, and he tried to claim credit for the United States being the world's largest energy producer, right? It's true. The United States is now the largest producer of oil and the largest producer of gas. That happened under Obama, right? Because of hydraulic fracking, the United States surpassed Russia in oil and natural gas and became the world's largest natural gas and oil producing country, the world's largest energy producer. That happened under Obama, so Trump didn't do that. But he bragged about it, and that happened because of fracking, right? And he said what was interesting is, we got to go to war. We don't have to go to war with these countries anymore to get their oil. Well, we were never going to war to get their oil, right? You should read my book, Oil and the Global Capitalist Crisis. Oil and the Global Capitalist Crisis. It's available. It's on Amazon. It's actually based on a speech I gave in Brazil to the Trade Union Center of Brazil, which is one of their big trade union coalitions. They invited me in 2016 to give a speech about oil price manipulation and the oil markets and imperialism. I gave a speech in Brazil, and I mean, they don't go to war to get a country's oil. They go to war to control the oil markets, to control the oil profits. And the USA has gone to Iraq, blown it to shreds, right? It's gone to Libya, blown it to shreds. It's been doing its best to blow Venezuela to shreds, blow Iran to shreds. It's about beating down any competitors on the international oil markets in order to reduce competition and make it so the United States and Western oil companies have like a captive market, which they almost do, right? At this point, you got the big four super majors, Shell, BP, Chevron, and ExxonMobil, plus Total, which is the French corporation, and that alone is 85% of the world's oil production. That's a monopoly, right? And, Wall Street is oil, right? I mean, BP is HSBC Bank, ExxonMobil is Chase Bank, Jeffrey Sachs, and China. All right. Okay. Jeffrey Sachs. INET dialogue. I mean, so one thing that, Trump really beat the drum. Biden wants to ban fracking. Biden wants to ban fracking. Biden kept saying, no, I don't want to ban fracking. No, I don't want to ban fracking. And this really kind of got to the essence of the issue here. And Biden did say he wants to transition away from oil. And Trump said, oh, you want to put oil people out of business? Well, big oil companies have been saying transition away from oil for a long time. This is what I emphasized in my book, Oil and the Capitalist Crisis. That's what's going on here. This is big oil versus little oil. The fracking companies, they fund PragerU. They're libertarian. They're free marketeers. They're ultra right wing. The big four super majors have more of a socially liberal agenda. The Rockefeller family, that's Standard Oil, which is now ExxonMobil, they're liberals, right? And they favor a more controlled economy in order to have stability. The fracking companies, they want to make lots of money, and this is the divide, right? Really, during the Obama years, the beginning of the Obama years, big oil shifted into the Democratic Party, and at that point, the fracking companies and the Koch brothers, they became the Republican Party. And this fight between big capital that wants stability, above all else, in order to stay at the top of the food chain, and lower levels of capital that want to get rich and want free competition and resent the fact that big companies get the government monopoly. That fight opened up. And Trump is an expression of that. Trump represents lower levels of American capital. And I've talked about that quite a bit. That'll come up during the Q&A too. But really, folks, I want to say this. I don't know who's going to win, right? I think there's a very good chance Biden could win, but there's still quite a chance that Trump could win. Everything looks like it's in Biden's favor right now. But I will say this, Trump was on the top of his game. Trump won tonight. Trump won the debate tonight, hands down, right? He said inaccurate things. He made a racist dog whistle. I'm not a Trump supporter. You all know that, right? I'm like one of the harshest critics of Donald Trump. But I'm telling you, it looks like Donald Trump won this debate. It looks like he won the debate. It was, and when he said, I'm not a typical politician, that's why people voted for me, and everything Biden hit him on, race or whatever, he had a comeback that made Biden look like a hypocrite. That tu quoque stuff, it works. It may not be accurate, right? If you're on trial for a crime, they charge you with stealing something from a store, and you get up in front of the judge and they say, yeah, well, what about all the other guys who stole stuff? I bet you didn't arrest them. He's not going to let you off, right? That's not an argument. What about somebody else doing it is not an argument, but it works. It works. And Biden, nailed it. Trump nailed Biden to the wall. Nailed him to the wall, Nailed him to the wall. Trump did his populist thing. Trump presented himself as a populist who is fighting the status quo, but it's a cynical populism because the thing is, Trump doesn't even try to defend himself on charges of corruption. Where is his tax returns? It's just, Trump doesn't, everyone knows Trump is corrupt. It's that cynical, like, we know Trump is corrupt, we know Trump is an asshole, but he's our asshole. He's mad at them, at the system, That's what Trump is good at. That's his charm. He knows how to push those buttons. He pushed all the buttons he needed to push tonight, especially towards the end of the debate. He was pulling ahead, and Biden was losing it. But towards the end of the debate, Biden was getting tired. He was having trouble finishing his sentences, and Trump was zooming ahead. Trump was on his game. At the beginning, Trump looked a little bit off, right? Just like the last debate. By the end, Trump was on fire. He was doing the Trump thing, right? It's awful. It's deceptive. It's racist. It's demagogy. And the last 4 years has been an utter disaster for the country. But it works. It's much more charismatic than what Biden is doing. He was saying, Biden, you're a typical normal politician. I'm a maverick. I'm a fighter for the average people. You represent the old corrupt status quo. I'm fighting the man. I'm fighting the system. And look, Silicon Valley did Trump a huge favor. When Twitter and Facebook banned that story from the New York Post about, Hunter Biden's crack pipe and his laptop, huge favor to Trump. Trump said, see, I'm fighting the man. Huge favor for Trump. The fact that Facebook is having a crackdown on QAnon right now, huge favor to Donald Trump. Huge favor to Donald Trump. Look, they don't get that, right? Americans hate the system right now. They hate the government. They hate the ruling class. They hate the big corporations. They hate the Silicon Valley tech monopolies. They hate them. And Donald Trump is very good at putting on a show like he's fighting against these people. He is not, right? He murdered Qasem Soleimani and took us to the brink of World War III. He has deregulated big corporations. He has lowered taxes on rich people. Trump has been a nightmare, but he's very good at putting on a show and making it look like he is fighting the man and he's fighting the system, right? He has been awful for this country economically. He has been, just pandering to the Israel lobby, just pandering to the Gusano lobby in Cuba. He has been awful for the country, but he's very good at putting on a show. And thank you, by the way, for the super chat. Much appreciated. Very good at putting on a show. And Biden represents the status quo that Americans are sick and tired of. Right? We Americans, the working families of this country, are sick and tired of the ruling class, of the billionaires and bankers that have run this country into the ground, have sent people off to die in wars, they've allowed communities to fall apart. Water is not properly purified. They're unpaving the roads. Power plants are crumbling. I'm sorry, folks. All right? Trump was doing the Trump thing tonight. Now, I still think there's a very, very, very good chance he'll lose the election because things in the economy are so bad right now, right? Unemployment is what it is right now. The pandemic and the media. I think there's a very good chance Trump will lose. But I'm telling you though, tonight killed it. He knew exactly what he was doing, and it was an epic performance. Trump, look, and the cages thing, right? About the cages, right? We know that Trump is committing horrendous activities at the border, separating families and all of that. But he comes back with, who built the cages? Who built the cages, right? And that's like, what's Biden going to say, right? Obama did all this stuff. Biden was vice president. I'm just telling you, folks, and again, that's not an argument, right? Two wrongs don't make a right. Obama did it too, doesn't make it okay, right? And what's going on at the border right now is not okay. What ICE is doing in communities right now is not okay. There are huge abominations being committed right now in this country against undocumented workers. At the border, it's a nightmare what they're doing. But, all Trump has to say is, who built the cages? It's true. The Democrats set all this up. They did. Trump wants to escalate it. And, look, I'll never forget Chuck Schumer, who was our senator here in New York. He was our senator here. He's still our senator here in New York. For me in particular, I knew what a lying piece of crap that man is. Do you remember the airport protests and the Muslim ban? Remember that? Chuck Schumer walked out in front of the cameras with Muslim little girls and headscarves around him, and he's crying. Oh God, these immigrants! This is mean spirited. He just couldn't take it. Well, I'm sorry. 2006. I was in the streets. With thousands of immigrant workers, not in New York City. I was still living in Ohio. I was a senior in high school. I had never been to protests that big, right? March, April, May of 2006, the biggest protests in the country in support of immigrant rights. The Farm Labor Organizing Committee. No one had any idea how big these protests were, but it was like in Columbus and Cleveland, every city, all over the country. And then May 1st, 2006, the biggest May Day New York City has ever had. All these people were protesting. And what were they protesting against? The Chuck Schumer bill. The Chuck Schumer anti-immigrant bill. So give me a break, right? And he's on there, I care about immigrants. Obama didn't do it, ran his before it ran his, right? Well, that's an interesting parallel, right? DPRK, Iran, but yeah, I mean, it's just fake. I mean, it's just phony. I mean, there were a couple moments that were kind of hilarious where the candidates misspoke, and it was like choice misspeech. It was like clever. Early on in the debate, gamer alt-right radicalization. Okay, all right. Gamer. You know, you know, I will say, yeah, the funny misspeeches that I caught tonight. So towards the beginning of the debate, Trump was talking about how he recovered from COVID. Do you remember this? And he said, "I'm badder. I'm badder." That was funny. I'm badder, right? Yes, you are badder, Trump. You've been badder and badder this entire presidency, right? The other thing was Biden couldn't bring himself to say the name of the white supremacist, white chauvinist, Western chauvinist, whatever you want to call them, organization, the Proud Boys. He called them the Poor Boys. He said, "You wouldn't call out the poor boys." And he either said poor boys, but then I remember there's a very famous sandwich. What would a socialist party the size of them? Okay, right, okay. There's a very famous sandwich from New Orleans called the Po' Boy. Socialist win this election. All right. So maybe that's what they were talking about, a po' boy sandwich, right, from New Orleans, right? It's a very popular sandwich in New Orleans. It's the special kind of bread. I don't remember what kind of bread, but it's a good sandwich. Maybe that's what Joe Biden was thinking of. He said, you wouldn't call out the po' boys. But yeah, that was something else. But yeah, like I said, I mean, Trump was killing it. Trump was winning. But I think there's a good chance he'll lose. I think that this election, in many ways, I mean, it's a mess. I really hope that there's not violence afterwards. I really hope that there's a peaceful transition or change or whatever, because we really don't want to see ugly unrest in the streets. I mean, the country's been through so much this country has been through. And so there you go. All right, so we got quite a bit of super chats to get through. But before we get to our super chats, why don't we at this point do our roll call? So names and locations. I'll call you out as I see you. Plus, if you're just joining us, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. Bring all your friends. The more the merrier. Post this on your Facebook or whatever. But names and locations, folks. Names and locations. I see Daniel in Portugal. Hans in Oregon. David in Italy. Wilmington, Delaware. South Korea. North Carolina. Boston, Massachusetts. Dust James is in North Carolina. Brantford, Canada. New Brunswick. Cincinnati, Ohio. Bernie from Missouri. Richmond, Virginia. Sam in Los Angeles. Auckland, New Zealand. Long Island, New York. Glendale, California. Chicago, Mississippi. JT24. Dan Miguel in Mexico. San Miguel. New Orleans. Seattle. Cakewalk compared to Libya. New Concord. Sicily, Italia. Tallahassee, Florida. Mohsen from Iran. Bro from Bronistan. FVK, Memphis. Clydebank, Scotland. Sasha from Thailand. Salem, Oregon. Denver. Phil in Miami, Florida. Albany, New York. Bendigo, Australia. David Fox. Jose Gonzalez from Venezuela. Pyongyang. Eric from Caleb's house. Somewhere, USA. North Vancouver. Wishing I didn't live in the USA. Herb Bryant in Florida. Portland, Oregon. Center of the Universe, MJ. Vallejo, California. Mo in Toronto. PRC, People's Republic of China. United Bananas of the Republic. Toronto here. Brisbane, Australia. New York City. Las Vegas. Richie in Staten Island. West Lafayette, Indiana. UK Laptop Repair Shop. USSR. Dan from Iran. Australia. Poulsbo, Washington. Southwest, Jacob. Rio de Janeiro. Herb Bryant. Hanging in with the poor boys. Ha ha ha. San Francisco. Chicago. Corona, California. Denver. Skye. Right? Is that the Isle of Skye? Right? Speed bunny boat like a bird on the wing over the fields to hills to sky. All right, New York City, Lloyd Bennett, Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, Quebec, Leipzig, East Germany, Rio de Janeiro, Duluth, Charlie in Glasgow, Scotland, Phoenix, Pennsylvania, Sex. All right, there you go. Hi, Cleveland. Where are you, Caleb? Brooklyn, New York, Quebec. Winnebago, West Philly, Pennsylvania, Phoenixville. Very, very good. Jenny Lynn is with us. Welcome, welcome. Hello, says Boris. Good to you. Hello to you, Boris. Belize, says Joey. Welcome, welcome. Stalingrad, says Will Lotz. Pennsylvania, Phoenixville. I've read your name 3 times. Melbourne, Australia, says Echo Whiskey. Welcome, Melbourne, Australia, Echo Whiskey. New Zealand, Joey, Parliament, Wellington District. Cleveland, Pirate Alex. Wow, a lot of folks joining us tonight. I'm glad it's a big night, right? We're reacting to the last debate between Trump and Biden. Elections on November 3rd. All right, Algeria. Someone from Algeria is with us. Wow, we always get a great crowd with these things. I mean, we are a community. We are a very, very special community. You know, and it's really great that we're able to get on here and chat. I get on here, especially since the pandemic, 2, 3 times a week. Glendale, California. Farshid in California. I get on here 2 or 3 times a week, and it's great. It's really, really great. So subscribe, be part of this community, because we're doing something really, really special here. It's really great. We get into a lot of depth about politics, and it's really great stuff. So we've got a number of super chats that people have sent, so why don't we just get through them all, right? First one was about Obamacare from the Heritage Foundation. Yeah, right. Obamacare was written by the Heritage Foundation. And in fact, the healthcare mandate, which was a big part of Obamacare, which is like if you don't buy health insurance, you get fined in your taxes. I remember George W. Bush proposed that, actually. Before Obama was elected, Bush pushed that forward, a healthcare mandate, right? So I mean, yeah, Obamacare, it was proposed by Mitt Romney and comes from, Obamacare is not socialism, folks. Obamacare fixed almost nothing, right, except for the pre-existing conditions. So I'm sorry, but it's communism. No, it is not. Alrighty. Yeah, David Fox said neither candidate represents the working class. Yep, Donald Trump represents the lower levels of capital, right? The fracking companies, Betsy DeVos, Sheldon Adelson, in revolt against the Rockefellers and the Morgans and the DuPonts and the Carnegies and the ultra-rich that want stability. This is a fight among the ruling class, and the working class is being left behind in this fight. What is it? China something. Oh, China under Mao, was it a nightmare? No. I mean, Mao was the leader of China, and he wiped out illiteracy, I believe, in China. Mao, he built the first power plants and steel mills in China. Mao did a lot of things to develop China's economy. Now, China's economy sped up a lot, more under Mao or under Deng Xiaoping. But yeah, Mao laid the foundations. The Cultural Revolution, I think, was a disaster. I mean, the Cultural Revolution was a disaster. And someone's saying, no, he said China was a nightmare before Mao. Yeah, before Mao, right. Well, yeah, I mean, there were famines every year before Mao. I made a video about this, right? I mean, the British Empire forced China to basically not develop its own industries, to be a client state. They waged 2 opium wars to beat down any economic independence in China and make China basically an impoverished client state of big British bankers and drug importing companies and such. And as a result, millions of people in China died all the time, right? And nobody talks about this, right? It's like those deaths don't count because they don't have political value. There was a famine in China in 1928. Between 3 and 10 million people died, and the Wikipedia page for that famine is like 3 sentences long. Whereas the Great Leap Forward, because it happened under communism and has political value, is huge, right? There were famines every day in China. I mean, there were famines routinely in China before communism. And, meanwhile, it's China and the Communist Party that has gotten China at this point to be a country that has the second, at this point, the largest economy in the world. Right? Millions raised out of poverty. But somehow, no, communism causes famines. No, capitalism causes the famines. Communism cured the famines in China. But then no one wants to talk about that, right? And it's the same with the Soviet Union, right? There were famines all the time under the Tsar. Mass malnutrition, mass starvation. It was communism that ended the famines, right? Like these people don't and it's like, well, they always say, well, it's not real capitalism before or something, but it's like, give me a break, right? I mean, it's I mean, communism mechanized agriculture. In China, they called them iron oxen. It brought tractors to the farms. It created the first steel mills, the first power plants, it built storm levees to prevent flooding. I'm sorry, but like all these basic things that prevent people from starving to death weren't done until the communists came into power. So I don't know how you can say the communists caused starvation. Meanwhile, China was kept from developing by Western capitalism. Read about the Opium Wars. I mean, it's but again, people just it's like this double standard. Famines under capitalism don't count, right? Meanwhile, the fact that everyone in China wasn't immediately on the level of a Western country the second Mao took power proves communism doesn't work. I mean, it's like it was communism that cured the famines in China. It was communism that cured the famines in the Soviet Union. I'm sorry, some things are true, some things are not. All right, all right. Pan-American socialism. No, I wouldn't be for that because I wouldn't see. I would see that as potentially a violation of the sovereignty of the people of Canada and the people of Mexico, right? I wouldn't want all of North America to become one country because the people of Mexico, I think, have a unique identity culturally, and I don't think they want to have the U.S. government. I don't think they want to be part of the same because the United States would dominate. That's really clear. I mean, the U.S. economy is so much bigger than Mexico's economy, so much bigger than Canada's economy. The population of the USA is much bigger than both of those countries. So I don't think it would be fair to Mexico and Canada to be part of the same country as the United States. I just don't think that would be right because I feel like it would lead to Canada. Canadians have a unique identity. They are not Americans, right? They have some, there might be culturally similar, but they are not Americans. Mexicans are not Americans, right? And they make very clear we have our unique cultures. So if indeed, if indeed there was, there was to be some effort, I feel like that would lead to the violation of the sovereignty of both Mexico and Canada. So I wouldn't be for that. Okay. China in the Korean War. Mao's own son died in the Korean Peninsula, right? After the Second World War, Korea was divided. And then in the South, a military dictatorship was set up, the dictatorship of Syngman Rhee, and they were slaughtering students. And at Jeju Island, there was massacres of leftists. And it was made clear what North Korea wanted and still wants to this day is, peninsula-wide elections in which the Communist Party or the Korean Workers' Party can take part in the elections. They want peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula. They have all along said that. And after the Korean War, not only would the USA and the Marshall Plan and the puppet government of South Korea not allow that, but on top of that, the government of Syngman Rhee, was slaughtering students. And so not only are they not allowing free elections, but when students organize for their rights, they kill them. So yes, North Korea tried to reunify the peninsula. And when that happened, the U.S. military was sent, and you had the Korean War. And China saw right on its border the United States murdering millions of Koreans. 4 million Koreans died during the Korean War. Every building above 1 story tall was bombed. Real horrendous war crimes took place. There's, Bruce Cummings has written a lot about it. There's a documentary, The Unknown War. The war crimes the U.S. military committed on the Korean Peninsula are atrocious. So in response to that, China saw North Korea under attack and figured that if North Korea were to be, taken over and it could become a base to spread counter-revolution into China. So millions of Chinese people went and fought on the Korean Peninsula. And Mao's own son, Mao and Yang, actually died in the war, right? Stalin's son died in World War II, right? And that people forget this, right? Did the Bush twins go and die in Iraq? No, all right? Did Malia and Malika Obama go die in Afghanistan or Libya? No. Right, but in the communist countries, they have a different system. Stalin had a son who died in World War II. Mao's own son died on the Korean Peninsula. And the Chinese people, basically they were determined to not let the United States, just pillage North Korea. And so in response to that, and then people again they forget this, the United States threatened to drop atomic bombs on China. The folks remember this, right? There was a threat of nuking China in response to that, right? So much history is lost. So I'm glad that someone asked about that. Okay, why would Biden not, try to attract voters? Well, the thing is, Biden is banking on anti-Trump sentiment, right? Just like Hillary Clinton, right? He's representing the political establishment running against Trump. And he is not trying to lead a populist upsurge from the left against Trump. He is trying to rally the establishment around him. That's why he keeps saying, I don't want to ban fracking. Don't worry, I don't want to ban fracking. That's why that's why he's got a campaign full of neocons. That's why that's why Kamala Harris, of the Hillary Clinton State Department, she's comes out of the same, she was selected by the same people that set up the Hillary Clinton State Department. I talk about that in my book. That's why, folks, the Joe Biden, Joe Biden is not trying to run a left populist campaign. He's not trying to lead a left-wing upsurge. It's the opposite. Joe Biden is trying to rally the establishment against Trump, and it might work, honestly. There's a very good chance he could win this election. All the polls seem to indicate he could win, but then again, we remember last time, right? We remember last time, so, never say never. But, Biden is not interested in being Bernie Sanders, right? And Donald Trump said, look, I'm not a typical politician, that's why I was elected, right? And the Democrats had their chance to pull that card. They don't want that. They don't want that. All righty. Okie dokie. Next question. All right. Why do the ultra-rich hate social democrats like Bernie Sanders? Easy. Because they represent instability, right? They represent the people being mobilized, protests, people out in the streets, people rising up, people protesting. They don't want that, right? Just like the right populists represent, turning up the apple cart, lower levels of capital. The left also represents, labor unions, people out in the street, protesting, mass movements. They don't want that, right? What the ultra-rich want is stability. That is what they want, because they are already at the top of the mountain. They have gotten to the top of the mountain, and from the top of the mountain, they are shouting, game over. The game must end because we are at the top of the mountain. And anything that would shake up that situation and potentially take them off of the top of the mountain and put somebody else at the top, they're against. That's how the ultra-rich see it. And they're rich enough, they can pay money to stay at the top of the mountain, right? And the social democrats, they're shaking things up from the left. The far right is shaking things up from the right. The social democrats, they just want a controlled, stable, they just want everyone to stay in their place. They're at the top of the mountain, and they're willing to pay some money. And they're willing to do more liberal things to make that happen. They are about control because they've already won the game. They've won the game, so they want to announce game over. However, the ultra-rich want to keep making money. And globally, right? Russia and China and developing countries want to, increase their wealth and become more prosperous, right? The ultra-rich, they want to stop growth. They're opposed to growth, right? Because growth will ultimately lead to them being overturned. They want to end growth. They talk about slow growth, but what they really mean is no growth. They talk about overpopulation. They talk about reducing consumption. The ultra-rich are about stability, and the way to have stability is to beat down countries around the world and to, lock down the United States into a very carefully controlled, low-wage police state. That's what they're about. That is what they're about. All righty. China surpassing the U.S. economy. Well, the U.S. economy is in shambles right now. China's economy is zooming ahead right now. If the United States, if the pandemic ends over here, there's a very good chance the USA could once again be the top economy. But yeah, China surpassing the U.S. economy is a pretty big deal. Pretty big deal. Biden's son served in the military. That is true. That is very, very true, right? Biden did have a son who fought in Afghanistan. His other son was kicked out of the Navy for using cocaine, but that is true. Biden's son fought in the military. All righty. Jeffrey Sachs, China Dialogue. Well, look, Jeffrey Sachs, he was an economist in the late 80s and the early 90s in Latin America and in Eastern Europe, and he was horrendous. He was a Chicago school free market economist. However, nowadays, he's more of a social democrat. He will say things about Venezuela that are sympathetic. He will criticize free market policies. He seems to lean more in the Bernie Sanders direction now. But when he was in Bolivia, he was the butcher of Bolivia. He was horrendous in Bolivia. He was horrendous in Eastern Europe. He was George Soros's man in Eastern Europe. He looted Eastern European countries. Jeffrey Sachs was horrendous, but now Jeffrey Sachs seems to talk a more liberal social democratic game. He does work with the UN. He's more of an academic now. But actually, oddly, I agree with a lot of stuff Jeffrey Sachs says now. It's interesting. He's critical of U.S. foreign policy. He's more social democratic. I don't know, but I mean, he will always be known as the butcher of Bolivia. He will always be known as the bringer of shock therapy to Eastern Europe. He basically created Pinochet-style reforms in Bolivia without a Pinochet regime. That was what they praised him for. He did Chicago School Chile in Bolivia without a military junta dictatorship. Jeffrey Sachs has a bad record, but, I agree with a lot of what he says now. I mean, who knows? Maybe he had a change of heart. I don't know. I have no idea. Maybe this is all part of his strategy. I have no idea. I don't know. The way he is now versus the way he is then, don't understand it. Alrighty. Um, all right. Is the DPRK for Trump kind of like what Iran was for Obama, right? That's an interesting parallel to make. So Obama signed the Iran nuclear deal. Trump ripped it up. Trump was trying to negotiate with North Korea to give up their nukes, and it was sabotaged. That's an interesting parallel. There's a key difference there, which is that Iran does not have nuclear weapons, and Iran has never been trying to get nuclear weapons. Iran has been in 100% compliance with the Iran or with the International Atomic Energy Agency. When they had nuclear power, they never were trying to get nuclear weapons. And then when the nuclear deal was in effect, they were 100% in compliance. North Korea has nukes. They've tested. They have nukes. Iran does not want nukes. Does not have nukes. Is a member of the the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. So yeah, there's a big difference there. But yeah, right. Obama wanted to de-escalate with Iran, and the right Republicans ruined it. Trump wanted to de-escalate with North Korea, and John Bolton ruined it. And the CIA ruined it by attacking the North Korean embassy in Spain. So yeah, there you go. All right. The gamer alt-right radicalization pipeline. Well, all right. Well, see, here's the thing. I am not somebody who is an advocate of authoritarian parenting. I'm not one of these people who's all like, don't let your kids watch anything on TV, and be sure to, beat your children because that'll teach them a lesson. And if your kids are not getting good grades, you should ground them for weeks. I'm not an advocate of authoritarian parenting at all, right? I think that, the kids should be given the freedom to do what they want to do and all of that. But I will say that one thing that I am grateful for is that my parents did not allow me to play video games, because I look at people playing video games and I see it as I'm just, maybe it brings you a lot of joy, right? And no offense to you. If you're somebody who can get a lot of joy out of playing video games, good for you. Good for you, right? But I look at video games and I think it doesn't look productive to me, and I just feel relieved that I do not do that. And that some people can kind of get addicted, and they can get kind of caught up in that video game world. And I think about the debate that I had with Destiny, where it was like Destiny couldn't understand that I wasn't playing SimCity, right? I kept saying, well, that's not, the issue. He kept saying, yeah, but in socialism, how would this happen? He wasn't understanding that, like, socialism isn't SimCity, right? He thought socialism was a video game, right? And then at one point he said, what does life expectancy prove? Because it's like, and that on some level, video games can kind of put you in an alternate reality. And again, someone's saying he's being a boomer, and maybe I am, right? And I apologize, right? And, but I feel good about the fact that my parents didn't allow me to play video games, because I just worry about it. And then gamer culture is known to have a lot of cynicism. And gamer culture is known to have a lot of, a lot of the cynical, F word, who cares, depression, a lot of stuff that people associate with people that go into the alt-right, that is associated with gamer culture. And Destiny, who used to be this anti-alt-right guy, now, Destiny, who I debated, he was like the big, guy who was fighting the alt-right, the first professional video game player or whatever. Now he, at this point, is defending the Kenosha shooter. He's defending, white nationalists shooting protesters. I'm telling you, there's something about video game stuff. It doesn't sit well with me. But I'm not a psychologist. I'm not someone who's studied this in depth. I just have a bad feeling about video games. I feel like it's not good. I feel like it just gives me a bad vibe. I try to limit the amount of rock and roll music I listen to, to get through the day, especially when I'm at the gym, but I realize that rock and roll music kind of hypnotizes you, right? It kind of hypnotizes you. When you listen to rock and roll music, you're listening to two things. You're listening to repetition that kind of hypnotizes you, and climaxes, repetition and climaxes, right? But if you listen to, Bach, you listen to Beethoven, you listen to Mozart, it's a completely different thing. It's art all the way through, right? It's like mathematical. It's like got patterns. It's beautiful, right? But if you listen to rock and roll music, you're being hypnotized, you're being hypnotized, you're being hypnotized, and then there's climax, 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 and then you're back to being hypnotized, and it's not the same thing, right? And that it's, that there's a level of in-depth beauty with classical music, and not including Wagner, because Wagner it's the same. Wagner's the same. It's as rock music. There's a level. Disco Elysium is a really popular left-leaning ML-friendly playing video game. Oh, that's great. Maybe I'll have to check it out sometime. But I try to listen. I try to limit the amount of rock music I listen to. Every day in the morning, I wake up with Bach, Beethoven, or Mozart, or Haydn, right? Or Haydn, or Handel. Sometimes I'll go to sleep with the Chopin nocturnes, but I try to, because I realize that classical music stimulates my mind differently than rock music does. And that rock music is okay, but it kind of, I don't know, it's not as in depth, right? It's kind of, hypnotic. It's kind of turning your brain off and stimulating kind of a pleasure center in your mind, kind of hypnotizing you. Whereas Beethoven is getting you to think and getting you to notice patterns and getting you to be mathematical, and it's a very different experience. And I worry when I see people playing video games that it's like a way that they're kind of further tuning out from reality, and that concerns me. And I know that depression is a very big deal, and that in a lot of ways, when people talk about the gamer to alt-right pipeline, there's this guy PewDiePie, right? And I think the shooter in one of these alt-right shooters, he shouted, "Follow PewDiePie" in his shooting. And that guy's just a gamer, but he does, it's like the racist jokes, right? It's like edgy. It's like, what? I made a racist joke. What? Do you have a problem with that? It's this kind of immaturity that kind of bleeds through everything. But, maybe I shouldn't talk about this. You shouldn't talk about things you don't know, right? And here I am talking about things I don't know. So maybe I should just shut my mouth, because I don't know. I really don't know enough about it. I'm telling you my gut sense and my feelings about it. But you know what? This is unfair, right? I really don't know what I'm talking about, so I shouldn't talk about this. Okay. Alrighty. And now the next question was, what would a major socialist party do to win this election? Easy, right? They would immediately enact a mass construction program. You should listen to Eric Satai's classical music. Thank you for the suggestion. They would immediately put into effect a mass construction program to put people in the country to work, right? Hire the unemployed to start rebuilding the country. This country is falling apart, right? And they need a mass jobs program. That's what they would do to win, right? Immediately, right? Mass jobs program, shut down the Pentagon and replace, bring home all the soldiers overseas and overseas bases, and then instead replace it with a mass construction program to rebuild the country, right? You would win. Now, I have said that my 4 points to transition to socialism would be that mass construction program. Second would be public control of oil. Third would be public control of banking. And fourth would be the implementation of an economic Bill of Rights. And if we passed those 4 things, we would be in the middle of a transition to socialism. But I think just on the platform of full employment and mass reconstruction of the country alone, I think you could win this election, right? If you were to say, hey, look, we're going to have a new deal. We're going to have a new deal. We're going to rebuild the country. And, you could win. You could win. If you were a major political party and you were offering that, you said, everyone who's unemployed right now, I get in office, I will use an executive order to hire you immediately. We're going to start putting you to work, doing everything that needs to be done in your neighborhood, rebuilding the community, paving the roads, power plants. If we did that, right, high-speed railway, new universities, build new schools for the country, new power plants, new water treatment facilities, new, high-speed internet in every corner of this country. Not a single part of this country that doesn't have high-speed, Wi-Fi accessible internet. If we did that, if you had a mass construction program, you could win the election, hands down. People would be like, wow, hire me now, right? You would end unemployment with a mass rebuilding the country. People would vote for you. All right, folks. Now, is there anything else? Anything else before I close? Does anyone have any last questions? I gave you my reaction to the debate. We did our roll call. I answered your questions. If not, then we will conclude. So, is there anything else? Why do people buy into the alt-right? Good question. Why do people buy into the alt-right? I think it's because the mainstream right is proven to be so phony. I mean, the neocons, they just believe in capitalism. What does it mean to be a conservative now? It means you believe in capitalism. That's all it means, right? It means you believe in capitalism, right? And I think that there are a lot of people that are conservative in other ways, right? They're conservative in the sense that they're religious. They're conservative in the sense that they want to be part of a community. They want to be that there is another side to conservatism. And that the left has very much become about identity politics and all that I think the notion of the alt-right is attractive to some people, people that already have, on the right, there is a lot of racism already, anti-immigrant sentiment, the belief that, people of color are dangerous and need to be locked up. These are widespread sentiments among conservatives, and even a lot of liberals kind of think that way in the United States. There's been a big pushback against it in recent years, but, racism is a real problem in the U.S. society. It's a real problem in U.S. society, and there's a lot of white Americans that are racist. I mean, that's a reality. When I was in college, I would tell people I was going to a political meeting in downtown Cleveland. I was going to get on the bus, and people would be like, "Aren't you afraid you're going to get shot?" And I'd be like, "No, I'm not afraid I'm going to get shot. I never got shot. I went to political meetings throughout my whole 4 years of college. I went to political meetings, and I never got shot, right? But all these people in the suburbs thought I was going to get shot." Because they were racist, right? CPUSA, past, present. And what is it? Paul Cockshot, his planned economies work in computer technology. I don't, all right, past, present. All right, and Paul Cockshot, computers, planned economies. Well, here's the thing, folks. As far as the Communist Party USA, I mean, their past, I talk about William Z. Foster is my favorite writer. Satan. All right. I don't know what you mean by Satan, Gleb, but I'll take it. William Z. Foster is my favorite writer by far. I learned so much from William Z. Foster's writing. I mean, the Communist Party has an amazing history. I know a lot of people in the Communist Party right now. Great folks. There's differences within the Communist Party, just like any other organization. I'm not a member of the Communist Party. I'm not a member of any political party. I am trying to start a think tank. There are differences in the Communist Party. There's all kinds of people in the group, and, they're very friendly to China. And I think that's good. The group, there was a guy named Sam Webb who was a leader for a long time. He's no longer the leader. There's a lot of younger people that are joining them right now. There are many different factions and views within the Communist Party, and I'm not part of the Communist Party, so I can't really comment on that. But, they've been through a lot. In the 1950s, they were basically outlawed. Their national board went to prison. They lost a lot of people after the fall of the Soviet Union. There was the split with committees of correspondence. Their longtime leader was a guy named Gus Hall, who was very much a hero. I mean, he was a working class hero and an anti-imperialist. I have great admiration for Gus Hall. World government. Okay, so next question. All right. Paul Cockshot, he says computers would play a role in planned economies. Well, he's right. I think computers would definitely, especially nowadays. Why would we not use artificial intelligence and computers to aid in central planning? I haven't read Paul Cockshot's work, but that sounds about right. All right, world government. Well, I don't think the thing is, I think that there probably will be, just as, they talk about the world is getting smaller because of computers and stuff. We're becoming more interconnected. Travel is a lot easier. But at the same time, people are going to want their sovereignty, right? I mean, so will there ever be one world government in the sense that there is there is no sovereignty whatsoever? All of humanity has one state? I don't think so. Will there be more international ties and stuff, international alliances and relationships? Yes. Will countries become more interconnected economically? Yes. And I like President Xi Jinping's vision of a shared vision for all mankind, a shared community of all mankind. I think that's great. And I think, yes, we are going to be moving closer and closer together. Um, you know, but at the same time, I mean, we are going to be moving closer and closer together. But I think that people will want to maintain their sovereignty to some degree or other. If you went to Africa and said, "Hey, Africa, we're going to have the same government as Europe," and they wouldn't go with it. And the same for Asia, right? If you said to all of Asia, "Hey, you're going to have the same government as Europe and the United States and South America," they wouldn't go with it. They wouldn't go with it. I think that to some degree or other, there's going to be sovereignty. Uh, but I think that there will be a lot more cooperation, and I think national barriers will erode gradually. I think the differences between people will become less and less and less as time goes on. But I think that I don't really see one government for the entire planet anytime soon. I think there'll be cooperation, and I think there'll be material abundance. But I think that on some level, there's going to be national sovereignty. But who knows? I mean, communism, they talk about, socialism is the first stage, but communism is this ultimate stage of the world with so much material abundance, there's no need for a state. And yeah, it's like something we can't even imagine. So perhaps in a hypothetical society, are feds involved in extinction rebellion? Well, geez, they don't tell me this kind of thing, right? I mean, the FBI's Bureau of Infiltrating Protest Groups doesn't call me up and tell me what groups they're infiltrating. So how would I know that? I mean, what kind of question is that? Like, I mean, are feds involved? Well, how would I know? Right? I mean, geez, the CIA, do you think they call me? They think they call Caleb on the phone. Hey, Caleb, just so you know, we're infiltrating Extinction Rebellion today. But don't say it on your YouTube broadcast, right? I mean, come on. Why are you asking me that? That's like a dumb question, right? Now, any protest movement, mind you, especially one with lots of people in it, is going to be monitored by the government to some degree or other. Furthermore, though, there's another side to this, which is that, which is Paul talk, which is that on top of that, there are different factions in the government that use these political groups for their own ends. So there you go. All right. Paul talks about replacing currency with labor credits based on hours worked and scaled by difficulty as a way to operate a planned economy. Thoughts? Well, that's in Lenin's book, The State and Revolution. He talks about that as well. He talks about the idea of, instead of an actual currency, it's like you've worked so many hours, so you get this many credits. But that kind of is the same thing as a currency. So it's interesting that Paul talks about that. I'll have to read his book. I have his book, The New Socialism. I just haven't read it yet. But there you go. There you go. I'm tired. I'm sorry. I'm tired. But there you go. But yeah. Anything else, folks? If not, thanks for being with me tonight. It's really a pleasure to be with you as a community. I'm particularly tired tonight. It was a long day. Got up early. It was a long day, but we'll be back. I'm sure I'll be live this weekend for sure. Maybe both Saturday and Sunday. At least one of those days I'll be live. All right. Someone's asking about Iran. I think there's a good chance Ahmadinejad could become president again. I think there's a very good chance of that. I think the hardliners could be back in office again soon in Iran because of the Iran deal and how badly Rouhani's strategy of negotiating with the United States didn't work. But there you go. So thanks for asking that question. All right, folks. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. While the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today. While the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today. And on that note, I'm out. Thank you, Space Communist. Thank you. I'm out. Good night.